The logging industry spent hundreds of millions of dollars building modern skidders loaded with GPS, computerized transmissions, and Tier 4 emission systems. And yet right now, somewhere deep in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, Appalachia and rural Canada, a beat-up machine from 1968 is pulling loads that would make a brand new $400,000 skidder sweat. These aren't museum pieces. They're running, they're working, and in some critical ways they're winning. Here are 10 legendary skidders from the 60s and 70s that refuse to be retired. Number 1. Timberjack 230. Let's start at the very beginning of the rubber-tired skidder era. Timberjack was founded in Woodstock, Ontario by Wes McGill and Robert Simmons. Their concept was elegant, an articulated four-wheel drive tractor with a winch at the back. The prototype worked, production took off. The company eventually came under the ownership of the Eaton Corporation, which ran it through the 1960s and 90s. The Timberjack 230 became one of the most recognized skidders of its era. It was purpose-built for logging. Not an adapted farm tractor, not a construction machine with logging attachments bolted on, but a machine conceived specifically for pulling timber out of the woods. One of the reasons the 2030 remains highly regarded to this day is exactly what old-timers still praise: generic parts. Unlike later vertically integrated machines from John Deere or Caterpillar, the Timberjack 230 used components that were widely available, interchangeable, and cheap to source. Its manual transmission was rugged, simple, and field repairable. You didn't need a laptop or a dealer visit to diagnose a problem. The machine's four-wheel drive and articulated steering gave it exceptional maneuverability through dense timber. Experienced loggers in the northeastern United States and eastern Canada ran these machines hard for decades, and many examples survive in working condition today. The 2030 is a diamond-in-the-rough machine, small enough to work in tight quarters, strong enough to earn its keep, and simple enough that a dedicated logger can keep one running for a fraction of what modern skidder maintenance costs. Number 2. Garrett Tree Farmer. If Timberjack was the industry's workhorse, the Garrett Tree Farmer was its pioneer. Garrett is widely credited with first popularizing the rubber-tired log skidder in the Pacific Northwest. Their earliest models were intentionally small, light enough to run on the large farm tractor tires of the day, which were the biggest low-pressure tires available at the time. This was the key design insight. Low-pressure, high-flotation tires meant a machine could actually traverse soft, wet forest ground without sinking. The earliest Garrett machines ran small Ford gasoline engines. Simple, uncomplicated, field serviceable by anyone who'd ever worked on a truck engine. As the market developed through the late 1960s, Garrett moved to larger models. The Tree Farmer name became synonymous with the articulated rubber-tired skidder itself. It was that influential. Competitors who entered the market in the late 60s were in many ways following the template Garrett had established. What makes the Tree Farmer still relevant? Its simplicity and the fact that Garrett designed these machines around real-world logging conditions rather than engineering theory. The company was responsive to what loggers in the field actually needed. Later, Franklin would purchase the Tree Farmer brand in 1990 and continue production until Franklin itself shut down in 2010, a testament to how enduring the basic design concept proved to be. Number 3. John Deere 440 Skidder. This one is impossible to leave off any list about iconic logging skidders. John Deere introduced the 440 Skidder in 1965, and it genuinely changed the industry. Before the 440 arrived, wheeled skidders were largely just an engine bolted into a frame. They worked, but they were brutal on operators. There was no real consideration of operator comfort, safety, or ergonomics. The machine either moved logs or it didn't. The 440 changed that equation. It brought operator comfort into the woods. It introduced a level of safety and productivity thinking that hadn't existed in the skidder market before. Its 59 horsepower output was modest by later standards, but the machine's reliability and thoughtful design made it a genuine workhorse. The 440 was the foundation on which John Deere built its entire half-century legacy in the skidder business. It is no exaggeration to say that every John Deere skidder built since, including today's L2 series running up to 300 horsepower, traces its DNA back to the 440. Why does it still matter? Because the 440's design philosophy, Reliability, operator focus, and purpose-built engineering produced a machine that logged hundreds of thousands of hours across North America. Working examples still pull timber. They are collector machines, yes, but also functional ones. Number 4. Caterpillar 518 Skidder. Caterpillar entered the rubber-tired skidder market with its characteristic approach: overbuilt, over-engineered, and over-durable. The CAT 518 was introduced in 1971 in the United States, with Canadian production beginning in 1973. It ran a D330 or 330-4 turbocharged 4-cylinder engine producing 120 flywheel horsepower, a significant jump over many of its competitors. It came standard with a power shift transmission, electric start, and a rollover protective structure ROPS, which was a serious safety advancement for its era. The American-built 55U variant added front-wheel caliper disc brakes. The Canadian version featured articulated steering. The CAT 518 weighed approximately 22,000 pounds, putting it squarely in the standard skidder class of its era, consistent with the roughly 20,000-pound benchmark that defined the market in the early 70s. What the 518 had above all else was CAT build quality. These machines were assembled to tolerances that the competition rarely matched. The 3304 engine in particular became legendary for longevity. Machines from the 518 series continued in production and use for decades, and today a well-maintained 518 remains a capable and sought-after machine. CAT is legendary in the Pacific Northwest especially, and the 518 is a big reason why. When a logger said he was running cat iron, people knew what that meant. It would take abuse and keep working. Number 5. Clark Ranger Skidder. Clark Equipment's Ranger skidder line had a complicated legacy, but its best years produced some genuinely impressive machines. Clark entered the skidder market in the late 1960s, following the trail blazed by Garrett and Timberjack. The Clark Ranger models, including the 6064, 6065, 66, and eventually the Ranger 880, earned a reputation for solid performance when properly set up, though they also required knowing how to configure them correctly. The Clark 6-hit is a case study in the difference proper setup makes. In its standard configuration, it was considered inferior to the Timberjack machines of the period. But when loggers learned to remove water ballast from the tires, fit proper low-pressure Goodyear logging tires inflated to around 12 psi, install a tilt blade, and add rear wheel weights, the machine transformed into a highly efficient skidder. With those modifications, it reportedly became a market leader in some regions. The Clark Ranger 88E represented the upper end of the scale. At the time of its introduction, it was described as the biggest and most powerful skidder in the world. The Ranger brand had one of the more interesting post-Clark histories in the industry, transitioning through VME, Valmet, and Allied systems before skidder production eventually stopped. A casualty of industry consolidation, but during its Clark years, the Ranger was a serious machine built by serious people. Number 6. Franklin Skidder. Franklin is one of the names that defined the skidder market's formative years, and their machines earned hard-won respect through performance rather than marketing. Franklin's skidder line, including popular models like the Franklin 120 and later variants, became staples in small and medium logging operations across the eastern United States. What loggers appreciated was the same thing they valued in the Timberjack: accessible parts, understandable mechanics, and machines that didn't require a specialized technician to fix when something went wrong. A 1970 Franklin 120 that survives today, even one that's had its original engine replaced with a 6-cylinder Chevy gas unit, is reported by operators who have used them to handle logging jobs reliably for a fraction of what a modern machine would cost to run. That's not nostalgia talking, that's practical economics. Franklin's longevity as a company was itself a testament to the quality of their machines. They ran from the skidder market's early days all the way through to 2010, when the company finally shut down. Along the way, they also acquired the Tree Farmer brand from Garrett, keeping that legendary name in production for 2 more decades. Number 7. Timberjack 240. As an evolution of the successful 2030, the Timberjack 240 represented the refinement of a concept that already worked. The 2040 retained the practical strengths of its predecessor: articulated steering, 4-wheel drive, accessible components while pushing capabilities slightly further. Like the 2030, it became a long-running favorite in timber operations across North America, particularly in regions where smaller machines were appropriate for the terrain and timber size. The 240 models are especially praised for ease of operation. Getting in and out of the cab, something that sounds trivial until you're doing it dozens of times a day in cold weather while carrying a chainsaw, was more manageable on the 240 than on many of its competitors. In the early Deere 440 and Cat 518, operator access was a frequent complaint. The Timberjack 240 was better in this regard. Parts availability, as with the 2030, was a major selling point. Loggers who ran Timberjack equipment could often source components locally without waiting on dealer networks, and that meant less downtime and more board feet moved per season. Today, 2040s appear regularly on the used equipment market, still sought by small logging operations that know what they have. Number 8. Cancar C7D Skidder. Canadian Car and Foundry, Cancar, produced skidders that represented the upper end of the market in the mid-1970s. The Cancar C7D ran a Detroit diesel 453 engine paired with a hinged grapple, and it was archetypical of what the premium end of the skidder market looked like in that era. The Detroit diesel 453 was one of the most trusted engines in the logging industry at the time, durable, known, and supported by a wide service network. The hinged grapple on the C7D was a more sophisticated setup than the fixed winch cable systems that many competitors still relied upon. Grapple skidding allowed faster cycle times in the right conditions. You could grab a bundle of logs and go, without the time spent attaching and detaching chokers on individual logs. Cancar never achieved the same brand recognition as Timberjack or John Deere in the broader North American market. But among loggers who ran them, the C7D earned a reputation for toughness and capability that stood alongside anything the competition offered. Number 9. Pettibone Skidder. Pettibone is one of the original names in the rubber-tired skidder business, listed among the very first wave of manufacturers who entered the market alongside Garrett and Timberjack in the early days of the industry. Pettibone came to logging equipment with experience in rough terrain material handling, and that background showed in how they approached skidder design. Their machines were built with the understanding that the forest was not a gentle environment, and that reliability under sustained punishment was the only metric that mattered. Pettibone Skidders of the 1960s and 70s developed followings in specific regional markets. They were not as nationally dominant as Timberjack or John Deere, but in areas where they were sold and supported, operators trusted them. The brand is an important part of the historical record because it represents the diversity of the early skidder market, a time when multiple serious manufacturers were competing for territory in a young and rapidly growing industry. That competition drove real innovation, and the results can still be found working in the woods today. Number 10. Monashee Timber Toter. This one might be the least familiar name on the list, but it has one of the most interesting stories. Harold, the founder of Monashee Manufacturing in Kelowna, British Columbia, saw a gap in the market in the early 1960s. The skidders available at the time, which were mostly designed for the gentler terrain of eastern North America, were not suited to the rugged mountains of British Columbia. Skidders as a category had come into being in the early 60s and were initially built for small logs on relatively flat ground. The first models ranged from 75 to 100 horsepower, and they were simply not adequate for BC's tougher requirements. Harold's answer was the Timber Toter. Built in 1964, it ran 135 horsepower from its very first model, a significant step up from the standard offerings of the period. But raw horsepower wasn't the only consideration. Harold had done the research. He understood that BC's steep terrain demanded specific design priorities: a very low center of gravity, good weight distribution, a long wheelbase, and adequate power and gear ratios for all situations. The Timber Toter was also designed to look good. Harold believed that a logger should be proud to have his machine on the job site. That attention to pride of ownership translated into machines that were well maintained and long-lived. Monashee continued production of the Timber Toter until the early 1980s. Retired loggers on Vancouver Island who ran 3 of these machines still speak of them warmly, particularly for long-distance hauling. The company itself survived forest fires, the COVID era, and multiple economic crises, and continues manufacturing truck and trailer components in Kelowna to this day, over 80 years later. The Toter is the proof that regional innovation, done right, produces results that mass-market manufacturers can't always replicate. So that's it for today. If you like this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching.